Welcome back to Living Through the Pause. I'm Dr. Butler, your favorite exercise scientist, and this is a space where we talk all things women's health, strength, and thriving through every season of life. Intermittent fasting has become one of the most talked about strategies in the wellness world, but for women, especially women in midlife, the conversation is often incomplete. We hear promises of fat loss, better energy, clearer thinking, improved metabolic health. But what we rarely hear about is how fasting interacts with hormones, stress, sleep, training, and the realities of a woman's physiology. So today, we're breaking down all the way down with science, with clarity, and with zero judgment. Intermittent fasting isn't about restriction, it's about rhythm. It's about giving your body the space to regulate insulin, repair cells, and operate with more efficiency. And when it's done correctly, it can be a powerful tool for women navigating the menopausal stages or simply trying to improve metabolic health. But fasting is not for everyone, and it's not a magic bullet. In this episode, we're talking about what fasting is, what it does, who it helps, who it does not help, and how to approach it in a way that supports strength, energy, and long-term health. Let's get into the science, the strategy, and the sanity behind intermittent fasting so you can decide if this tool belongs in your wellness toolbox. Intermittent fasting is an eating pattern that switches between periods of scheduled eating and voluntary fasting. Unlike traditional diets that focuses on what we eat, intermittent fasting focuses on primarily when we eat. During the normal eating rhythm, our body runs on glucose from the meals that we've already eaten. But when we extend that time between meals, usually 12 to 16 hours or even more, we give our bodies enough space to burn through that stored glucose and shift to what is called metabolic switching. This is where the magic happens. Once glucose is low, our body pivots to its backup fuel source, stored fat. It breaks down those fatty acids into ketone bodies, which our brain and our muscles use for clean, steady energy. This shift not only supports fat loss, but it activates powerful cellular housekeeping processes like autophagy, which is how our cells clear out old, damaged, inefficient components so they can function even better. There are several ways to apply this method. We have the 12-12 method, the 14-10 method, or the 16-8 method. These are time-restricted feedings. So if we do a 12-12, that means we have a window of eating for 12 hours, then we fast for the other 12 hours. If we do a 14-10, that means we have an eating window of 10 hours and we fast for 14 hours. Let's say our eating window starts at 6 a.m. Then we're going to start our fast at 4 p.m. And we're going to fast until 6 a.m. the next day. The 16-8 method is the most common. It limits food consumption to an 8-hour period, followed by 16-hour overnight fast. There are two fasting methods out there I want to briefly touch on, but I don't care for these too much. We have the 5-2 method and the alternate day fasting method. I'm going to break down what they are, then I'll explain why I don't recommend these for women, especially in midlife. The 5-2 method involves eating normal for 5 days and limiting intake to a single 400 to 500 calorie meal on the remaining 2 non-consecutive days. Let me foot stop that. 2 non-consecutive days. Do not be out there eating just 400 and 500 calories 2 days in a row. Please don't do that. This is where you only going to eat 400 to 500 calories the whole day. Some studies, and I emphasize very few studies, show that this method is beneficial for extreme weight loss in obese individuals. However, there is limited evidence on the effects on healthy weight women. But let's get into what the research shows. This method is flexible enough to be applied to a busy social lifestyle. You will lose weight, approximately a half a pound a week. The weight loss will help lower fasting blood glucose, decrease circulating insulin, and improve blood pressure and lipid profiles. Fasting days activates the body's built-in repair system to help dial down markers of systematic inflammation. Lastly, it tends to be a popular option because it eliminates the mental fatigue of tracking every meal every day. Now for the cons. Long-term adherence can become challenging, and the side effects, you're going to have headaches, irritability, you're going to be hangry, low energy, lightheadedness may occur. It can cause you to overeat high calorie or high processed foods on your regular eating days. You want to lose muscle mass. Study shows that it can lead to a slower weight loss rate. At no time would I ever sign off on eating 400 to 500 calories for the whole day. We need enough calories to support hormone production, thyroid function, muscle maintenance, cognitive performance, recovery, and sleep. During the menopausal staging, undereating increases menopause symptoms. It reduces metabolic flexibility, and it causes us to lose muscle. Alternating day fasting, also known as the every other day diet. This is where you fast every other day. You can eat whatever you want on your non-fasting days, but on the fasting days, you can only eat 500 calories. Studies show that by following this method, you're only going to lose moderate weight between 6 to 12 weeks. There's really no difference in the weight loss compared to other diets. The pros and cons, they're pretty much the same as the 5-2 method. So now that we have a better understanding of what the intermittent fasting methods are, let's discuss what is actually happening in our bodies when we actually implement this. First, insulin and blood sugar gets regulated. Every time we eat, especially carbs and protein, our pancreas steps in and releases insulin. Together, insulin and glucose move out of the bloodstream into our cells so we can use that for energy. After 12 to 14 hours of fasting, our liver glycogen starts to run low. That's the point where our metabolism flips the switch, shifting from using glucose for fuel and tapping into that stored fat and producing ketone bodies. It's the moment where our body says, all right, we're done running on what we just ate. Let's use some of that stored fat. Intermittent fasting can help reverse insulin resistance. When we spend more time with low insulin levels during our fasting window, that helps our pancreas and our cells rest. This time allows the receptors on the muscles, the liver, and the fat cells to reset and become sensitive again. As a result, when we eat, these receptors can clear glucose from our blood much better, which means we need less insulin. Next, it reduces inflammation. Intermittent fasting helps target visceral fat. As we reduce visceral fat, we lower systematic inflammation, removing the biggest contributor to insulin resistance. Now, as we move through the menopausal stages, intermittent fasting can make our cortisol levels more sensitive. Fasting naturally creates small stress response because the body has to tap into stored energy. But in midlife, when stress levels are already running higher than normal, the brain can interpret longer fasting periods as a sign that resources are low. That's when cortisol and adrenal can ramp up more quickly, and that shift works against the very goal that we're trying to support. High cortisol levels promote fat storage around the midsection and stimulates the liver to release stored glucose. If elevated continuously, it raises our baseline blood sugar and can actually worsen insulin resistance despite restricted eating windows. Then it can elevate night sweats and brain fog with elevated cortisol levels. Women in the menopausal stages who already combat high cortisol levels may not have success with intermittent fasting. When our cortisol keeps getting pushed day after day, fast after fast, it doesn't simply just stay a stress response anymore. It starts to pull the entire stress regulation system off rhythm. That's the point where we shift from normal cortisol fluctuation into adrenal dysregulation, where the brain and the adrenal stops communicating the way they're supposed to. For menopausal women with adrenal dysregulation, intermittent fasting can act as an overwhelming physiological stressor. When we fast, our body naturally shifts and begins to produce glucose from non-carbohydrates sources. That process signals our adrenal to release cortisol to mobilize fuel. In women with adrenal miscommunication, where cortisol rhythms are already flat, spiking at the wrong time, running low, pushing the adrenal to drive fuel mobilization forces an already exhausted system into a deeper burnout or straight into overdrive. When our blood sugar drops fast, a dysregulated adrenal axis often overreacts. Instead of making a small, appropriate correction, our body pumps out excess cortisol to force more glucose into the bloodstream. And here's where the paradox shows up for so many women. That surge creates quick blood sugar spikes, followed by steep crashes that brings cravings, shakiness, and brain fog. And on top of that, chronically elevated cortisol binds to glucocorticoid receptors that are heavily concentrated in varicose fat. So when we're eating in a deficit, that stress chemistry encourages fat storage right around the midsection. So again, I emphasize intermittent fasting may not be for women with high stress levels. Once our stress system is already dysregulated, there is another layer that we have to acknowledge. Fasting can start to mimic the same restriction patterns that many women have worked hard to heal from. And that's why intermittent fasting becomes especially risky for anyone who has had a history of disordered eating. For those who have had a history of disordered eating, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating patterns, intermittent fasting carries real physiological and psychological risk. The structures of fasting can easily mirror the restriction cycle many women have worked hard to heal from, making intermittent fasting potentially an unsafe tool. While intermittent fasting is often framed as a lifestyle pattern instead of a diet, its core mechanism relies on rigid food restriction, delayed consumption, and scheduled deprivation. For the brain, who is previously wired for eating disordered behavior, these mechanics can act as powerful relapse triggers. I urge you to talk to your healthcare provider or mental health care provider before starting if you have suffered in the past from disordered eating. Okay, so I have given you quite a bit of information, and some may think this is the magic bullet. Before I go on, let me be honest and share what intermittent fasting simply cannot and will not do for us. First, it's not going to fix poor nutrition. Somewhere down the line, people started believing you can eat anything during your eating window. Absolutely not. This concept is false. Fasting can change when we eat, but it cannot correct what we're eating. If our meals are low in protein, missing key micronutrients, or built around ultra processed foods, fasting will not override that. We can't fast our way into adequate nourishment when we don't give our bodies the raw material it needs: amino acids for muscles, minerals for hormone production, fiber for gut health, antioxidants for cellular repair. Fasting simply amplifies the stress signals. Instead of improving metabolic health, it can actually worsen cravings, slow recovery, disrupt sleep, and make cortisol even more reactive. Poor nutrition also means we never stabilize blood sugar between meals. So when we add fasting on top of that, the body is constantly swinging between spikes and crashes. The instability makes fasting feel harder, it increases hunger, and it pushes women into the very patterns that they're trying to escape. Fasting is a tool and not a foundation. Without a solid nutrition plan underneath it, the tool becomes ineffective. And for many women, especially in midlife, it becomes counterproductive. Intermittent fasting will never override chronic stress. And this is the place where so many women get frustrated. Fasting can change when we eat, but it cannot neutralize the stress chemistry that's already running low. When our cortisol is elevated day after day from life load, under recovery, poor sleep, emotional strain, or even overtraining, the body is already operating in survival mode. Adding fasting on top of that doesn't calm the system, it amplifies the stress signals. Chronic stress keeps our cortisol high, and high cortisol directly blocks the very benefits we are trying to get from fasting: stable blood sugar, fat mobilization, reduced inflammation, and improved insulin sensitivity. Cortisol overrides all of that. It tells our liver to dump glucose, increase cravings, disrupt sleep, and push fat storage around the midsection. No fasting window can ever outperform stress hormones that's already dysregulated. Intermittent fasting will never replace strength training. Fasting can change when we eat, but it cannot build or maintain muscle tissue that protects our metabolism. Muscle is an active organ. It drives insulin sensitivity, stabilizes blood sugar, supports thyroid function, and it keeps our resting metabolism rate from dropping as we age. No fasting window can do that. When we lose muscle, everything becomes harder: fat loss, blood sugar control, energy, sleep, even mood. And during the menopausal stages, that natural decline in estrogen accelerates muscle loss. That means strength training isn't optional, it's the anchor. Without it, fasting simply creates a smaller version of the same physiology, not a stronger one. Strength training is what tells the body we need to keep this muscle, build more. Fasting can support metabolic health, but it cannot replace the stimulus only lifting provides. Lastly, intermittent fasting will never compensate for undereating. And this is one of the biggest metabolic traps women fall into. Fasting can change when we eat, but it cannot make up for the fact that our body is not getting enough fuel to function. When we chronically undereat, whether it's intentionally or because life gets busy, the body shifts. Our metabolism slows, our thyroid output drops, cortisol rises, and muscle protein breaks down, increases. No fasting window can override that physiology. And here's the part women feel the most: chronic undereating paired with fasting pushes cortisol even higher. The body interprets the insufficiency not a strategy. Fat stress chemistry encourages fat storage around the midsection. It slows recovery and it makes weight loss feel impossible, even though we're eating less. Now, let me share 10 practical tips when considering intermittent fasting. Number one, stabilize your nutrition first. Before we even think about fasting, we need a consistent meal built around protein, fiber, healthy fats, and micronutrients. A stable foundation keeps blood sugar steady and prevents fasting from feeling like another stressor. Number two, prioritize strength training over long fasts. Muscle is the engine of the metabolic health. If we're not lifting, fasting won't deliver the benefits we're hoping for. We need, at a minimum, 3 to 4 times a week training sessions, strength training, per week to protect metabolism far more than a shrinking window. Number three, keep fasting windows gentle. For most women in midlife, a 12 to 14 hour overnight fast is plenty. It supports insulin sensitivity without pushing cortisol into overdrive. Longer fasts should only be considered when stress is low, sleep is solid, and nutrition is dialed in. Number four, eat enough every single day. Undereating is one of the fastest ways to disrupt hormones. Making sure that we're hitting adequate calories and protein so the body feels safe, nourished, and ready to respond positively to any fasting strategy. Number five, protect your cortisol rhythm. Quality sleep, morning light exposure, balanced training, and stress management practices helps keep cortisol in its natural rhythm. When cortisol is stable, fasting becomes far more supportive than less reactive. Number six, avoid fasting if you have a history of disordered eating. If you have ever struggled with restriction, binging, purging, obsessive food rules, fasting can reopen these patterns that you've worked hard to heal from. In those cases, structured nourishment is far safer than structured fasting. Number seven, listen to your body's feedback. Shakiness, irritability, night sweats, brain fog, intense craving, or feeling wired but tired are signs that the fasting window is too aggressive. Our physiology will always tell us the truth. We just have to listen. Number eight, build a supportive morning routine. Hydration, electrolytes, gentle movement. Sunlight helps the body transition smoothly into the day without triggering unnecessary cortisol spikes during a fasting period. Number nine, anchor every meal with protein. Protein stabilizes blood sugar, supports muscles, and keeps hunger predictable. Aim for 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal to make fasting feel easier and sustainable. And number 10, remember, fasting is a tool, not a fix. Intermittent fasting can support metabolic health, but it cannot replace nourishment, strength training, sleep, or stress regulation. When we build those pillars first, fasting becomes optional and not essential. Thank you for spending time with me today. Intermittent fasting is a powerful tool when it's used with intention, with nourishment, and with respect for realities of a woman's physiology, especially in midlife. My goal is to never tell you what to do. Is to give you the science the strategy, and the clarity so you can make decisions that supports your strength, your energy, and your long-term health. Remember, your body is not working against you. It's communicating with you. We just have to learn to listen to our hunger, our stress, our recovery, and our hormones. We make choices that helps us thrive through every season of life. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with another woman who deserves to feel informed, supported, and empowered. And as always, thank you for being a part of Living Through the Pause community. If you want to stay connected with me, learn more, or work with me directly, you can find me across all platforms. My website is www.newsomfitness, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Newsom Fitness. I'm also on LinkedIn as Dr. Butler. Reach out, join the community, and keep learning with me. We're in this together, thriving, evolving, and rising through every pause. Don't forget about my Menopause Awareness Resource Fair, October 3rd at Chicken and Pickle. Registration is open for attendees, sponsors, and vendors. I love your support. Until next time, stay blessed and encouraged, and I will see you in the next episode.